I have the Browns going 6-11 in 2025. Find out how I got there. Coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer Jones, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. I have the Browns going 6-11 in my official prediction for 2025. I'll walk you through how I got there, and I do think they'll be competitive in some other games as well. Plus, I have a Browns if list. If these things happen, how they can surprise people and maybe be a playoff team in 2025. Also, how the Browns win on Sunday against the Bengals featuring Jim Schwartz. First, though, I do want to thank you for being in every day here at the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed. First and foremost, let's get to it. The Cleveland Browns. I did this back in the spring when the schedule was revealed. I gave you my prediction back then, and I actually think I saved it. I had them at 6-11 back in May as well. But I think I'm taking a different path to get there now. I don't think it's my feelings have changed all that much, and I still do think 6 wins is maybe optimistic for where a lot of other people think this team is going to go, including Vegas, which has the number at 5.5. So I think you'd win some money if you play the over there. And I just think there's enough flaws on this team that I certainly have concerns, as many people do, about the outcomes this year. We know the schedule is going to be pretty tough based off of last year's results, but there are some unknowns with teams and things that we don't fully know or understand about some of the teams that are on this Browns schedule to this point. There's always room for teams to turn it around or surprise people themselves or be a playoff team that we weren't expecting. So those things all sort of come into play here. But I think 6-11 is where I've sort of settled in. And that starts with week 1 coming up this weekend, where I do have the Browns winning this game. I'll give you my score prediction to get out of here later in the show after we play some audio from Jim Schwartz and about how the game plan that he sees, or the path that he sees to beating the Cincinnati Bengals. So we'll get to that here in a little bit. But I do have the Browns winning this game on Sunday. I think they get off to a 1-0 start. Just feels like the Bengals' flaws leave room for the Browns to steal one here. The defense has some questions, obviously. The offensive line is still a question mark in some people's eyes as well. And on top of that, Joe Burrow is great. The weapons they have are great, but I think this defensive line is poised to cause some problems for him. And if they're able to do that, I think they can keep this game close enough that the Browns can probably eke one out towards the end and come out of there victorious. So I'm taking a win on Sunday, getting the season off on the right foot. Unfortunately, I'm going loss in week 2 because I think the Baltimore Ravens are just too damn good. I get it. It's the Ravens. They started 0-2 last year. It's a team you know well. But the Ravens roster is loaded. I think most people with the Ravens on the schedule will be picking against their respective teams because the Ravens are supposed to be a really good team. The Packers, I initially had this as a win for the Browns because I was kind of iffy on the Packers. But the addition of Micah Parsons, I've changed my tune a little bit on this team. I think they are poised to be in that Super Bowl conversation now. And so because of that, I think the Packers are able to get the win there. I think the Lions, despite losing their 2 coordinators, are still going to be a very, very good team, especially offensively. And I think their defense was so banged up last year, like we didn't get to see it in its true iteration. I'm excited to see what that group looks like for them. And so I think they lose that one and they start the year 1-3 through the first 4 weeks. Now, week 5, Minnesota Vikings. And what's interesting about this is the Vikings will already be overseas when they play this game in London. They'll have played the game in Ireland 1 week prior. So maybe that is a major factor here, and the Vikings are sort of going to be acclimated, so they're going to be locked in, and they're going to be set up to win that game with some comfort because they've already adjusted to the time and all that. But I'm iffy on the Vikings. Like I get that, I trust that Kevin O'Connell is a good coach. I trust that he's going to get the most out of his quarterback position, but we don't know what J.J. McCarthy is to this point. And until we do, I don't know that I'm just buying the stock that he's going to be great and light it up and be able to do all the same things. I know they got a lot out of Sam Darnold last year, but I see some aggression from one of these teams in the North, and I kind of feel like it might be the Vikings, especially after the Packers just traded for Micah Parsons. So I have a win there for the Browns, which might surprise some people. And then I have a loss against Pittsburgh on the road. Listen, coming back and playing Pittsburgh on the road, who's going to be coming off their bye week, and just as a house of horrors for this Browns team, especially coming back from overseas, I think that's a tough ask. I think you lose that game and you start those first 6 that we've talked so much about being tough. You start that opening stretch of the season out as 2-4. That paves the way for the Dolphins on October 19th at home. I like the Browns in this game. Speaking of teams that I think are going to take a step back, I think the Dolphins are right there with the best of those teams that we're talking about in that category. I just think there's a lot of problems there. Seems like there's a lot of animosity in that building. Tyreek Hill's not happy. I don't know how that transpires out on the field, how that plays out, but I like the Browns' chances in that game, and so I'm going to say they win that one and then get to 3-4 on the season. And now that sets up an interesting opportunity as you get ready for the bye week in week 9. You have the Patriots on the road Sunday, October 26th. And while I kind of look at this game and I'm like, look, I have them at 3-4 right now. This is a great opportunity to get back to 500 before the bye week. The Patriots have always seemed, and I know it's Belichick and it was Belichick previously. The Patriots have always seemed to have the Browns number. It's on the road. Mike Vrabel's a really good coach. I've always felt that way. I think he has those guys ready to go. And even though this is a game that you could argue the Browns win, they're going to lose some of these games. I think that they maybe come into with a closer spread or maybe have a better chance in. And I think the Patriots is one of those games. They're going to be a tough coach team. And I think they lose that one and they go into the bye week instead 3-5, which I think would be disappointing for a lot of people. Now you come out of the bye week, you got the Jets. Kevin Stefanski's teams are usually pretty good off the bye. I'm going to say they win that one to get back to 4-5. And so you're sort of back in the mix here as you turn the page into week 11 and you get the Ravens at home this time. Again, I refuse to pick against the Ravens this year. That team is just too good. Week 12, you get the Raiders in Vegas, repeat of last year's game, which was, a disappointing loss. You had the Nick Harris holding call that called back the touchdown to Amari Cooper. That probably changes some things in that game and maybe is a Browns win, but I think they get the job done this time with a more productive offense. And that sets you up to now be 5-6. And so they've teetered around 500 for most of the season here, but I think the end of the season is where things bottom out. I'm not super high in the 49ers this year, but I think that they're able. The Niners are coming to Cleveland as well in this one, which is interesting because that's a situation where they've lost before. They lost just a couple years ago in that same situation, and so I don't know how I feel about this one, but I'm leaning on Kyle Shanahan being a great coach, even though I trust Kevin Stefanski to sort of be able to go toe to toe with him. I feel like the 49ers will get this one and come out with a win. I think the Titans game, I'm giving to Cleveland. Rookie quarterback against this Browns defensive line, assuming they stay healthy, of course. I like the Browns' chances in that one. So you're still sort of teetering around 500 at this point in the season, as I have them with, how many wins is that now? I think am I at 6 now? I think I'm at 6, yes. It would be nice if I'd actually kept track along the way. Yes, I have them at 6. So the Titans game is their 6th one. And then this is where things, I think, take a turn. And that would put them in a position where like they're entering December, or they're in December in that hunt. They're showing up in the hunt graphic, right? But I think they lose out the rest of the year. Bears, Bills, Steelers, Bengals. I don't love the Bears for what it's worth, but I also wonder if Ben Johnson at that point in the season is going to have his offense really rolling and be able to do some things, and exploit some things for against a team like the Browns. And so I that one's kind of a toss up for me, where maybe they do win a 6th game and they get themselves, closer to that 500 mark yet again. But I'm not going to pick it here. I'm going to say they lose, and they lose out in December, which is of course the critical time of year, and into January, where you want your team to really be clicking. I think that's where the wheels maybe fall off a little bit, and they just don't have the dogs to keep up with the rest of the NFL. And they lose the Bears, Bills, Steelers, Bengals to close out the season. But like I said in the intro, there are going to be opportunities, that Bears game, that Patriots game, where I could see them being competitive and maybe winning those games. And maybe that's the difference in them then surprising people even more and finishing closer to 500 with like an 8-9 record, rather than just the 6-11 one that I'm predicting. So it's an interesting setup. It's an interesting conversation. And I think ultimately I just don't. I feel like the Browns are going to be better than last year. I feel like the offense is going to be better than last year without question. But I don't know if it's going to be enough to get more than 6 wins here. But if you tell me 7 or 8, I could see where your head's at with that, and I wouldn't totally disagree with the thought process there, because I can see where there's room for that to happen with a more competitive Browns team this year. Speaking of the season, I have a Browns if list. Things that would have to happen, or if they happen, would make the Browns a playoff team in 2025. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in 60 seconds. I've been playing Prize Picks, and it's one of my favorite ways to follow along with the football season. This week's max discounts include Lamar Jackson in his season opener, 0.5 passing yards. That's an easy one to play more on. Travis Kelce coming up in week 2, 0.5 receiving yards. Again, another easy one. And even his teammate Patrick Mahomes in week 3, 0.5 passing yards. Easy situations for you to cash out and win big with Prize Picks through the first couple weeks of the season. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 play. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. They follow what moves them every time they drive, and that's what makes Mazda stand out. They go beyond safety, style, and performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every detail. Mazda offers more than safety. It's won more 2025 IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August of this year. You can feel it in the moment you get behind the wheel. The smooth handling, intuitive controls, and standard all-wheel drive in every crossover SUV. Whether it's a quick drive to practice or a weekend road trip, Mazda makes even everyday drives feel special. It's the small details that make the big plays. And just like there's more to every player, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, so on top of making my season prediction, which is the one that we actually etch in stone for the 2025 campaign, I also formulated a fun little list here. I'm calling it my Browns if list. And what this list essentially encapsulates is, if these things happen, the Browns could really surprise people and end up being a playoff team, a team that makes the playoffs or is in that conversation at the end of the year. And the idea is here that you want less. You want less of those things to happen. For some teams, maybe it's an if list for winning a championship, winning a Super Bowl, being actually a Super Bowl contender. For the Browns, it's simply, if these things happen, they can absolutely be a playoff team. And this list is pretty exuberant for the Cleveland Browns because we know they have a number of flaws. But I'll start us off with, if the defense gets back to being what it was in 2023, this team absolutely can be in the conversation for a playoff spot. And I just mapped that out in my record prediction for the year, my 6-11 record prediction. It's a team that basically, if that defense is good, they're going to be in every game. And it's going to kind of come down to how good the offense can be on any given week with the flaws that they have at the receiver position, not having Quinshon Judkins out there, an older quarterback sort of manning the captaining the unit, and maybe rookies at some point taking over. It's going to kind of come down to that if this defense can be that dominant again. And I think they have the pieces to potentially get there, particularly up front with the defensive line. I've said it time and time again. This group is the best group under Kevin Stefanski's tenure that they've built up front in the trenches on defense. And yes, there's some questions in the secondary with depth and those types of things. But I do believe that there's a chance they're closer to what they were in 2023 than what they were in 2024. And that's obviously bodes well for the Browns. That's the first thing that has to happen. And by the way, I think that one's the most likely of these to happen. Number 2 on the Browns if list is if Joe Flacco turns back the clock again, like he did in 2023, and recapture some of that Joe Flacco prime magic from earlier in his career. If he's able to pull that off, if he's able to do that, then there's no reason to think that the Browns can't be in the conversation for the playoffs. The offense will be clicking. The offense will get rolling again. And those are the types of things that you hope for and look for when it comes to Flacco specifically. And that would give Browns fans hope that he can sort of bring that magic back to the table here and take this team to a place that it was just a couple years ago. I know he's talked a lot about not trying to think back to 2023 and recapture anything, quote unquote, or replicate that. He's just kind of taking 2025 for what it is, and he's treating it as a new season, a new opportunity. He's not looking backwards, which is the mindset you want your quarterback to have. But I do think, like, if he's able to get back to that and limit the turnovers, because that's key, then yeah, there's no reason to think this offense can't be better, certainly than it was last year, be competitive and win this team some football games. Another one, if the Browns offensive line returns to dominance, same way the defense is needs to get back to what it, or is looking to get back to what it was in 2023. This Browns offensive line needs to find an older version of itself, a previous version of itself, where they can force the issue with the run game. They can protect Joe Flacco and keep him upright. If those things happen, if they can return to being one of the premier units up front in the NFL like they used to be, then yeah, we're talking about a team that certainly has the capabilities of surprising people, maybe getting into that playoff conversation, doing some things and making some noise. I think they have certainly a veteran group that's done it before. They know what it takes, getting back to the basics of Kevin Stefanski's offense, and working with an offensive line coach who is teaching things the way that they like and is focused on the right things fundamentally, I think is a great start. I think they certainly have the chance to do that, but a lot of that's going to be about staying healthy. And that's another thing that shows up on my if list. If all the key players stay healthy, and I think that includes the offensive line, because that group has been banged up more than any other. The quarterback position's probably high in that list as well. But the offensive line unit the last few years has been banged up as much as any group on this team. And if Jack Conklin can finally stay healthy for a season, if Wyatt Teller can stay healthy, if Joe Bitonio holds up with another year under his belt, that unit is going to be a force, and they're going to sort of carry the offense and allow it to have some success. I think, though, that's one of the biggest ifs on this list, because health it's hard to project out teams being fully healthy for an entire season. Oftentimes, the teams that are the healthiest are the ones that end up winning championships or making the playoffs. But that's a hard thing to predict over a 17-game schedule. There's going to be bumps and bruises along the way. I mean, we heard it back when Martin Emerson Jr. got hurt in training camp. Kevin Stefanski says it all the time, like, injuries are part of football, unfortunately. And so based on where this team is at, an older group in general, those things are probably bound to happen in some areas. You just got to hope that at the key positions and up front in the offensive line and the defensive line, that it doesn't hurt them too much, or there's not too many of them that arise there, because that could be problematic, obviously, for this team just in general and really derail any hopes they have of being a playoff team. And then the last if, which by my count, this is 5 ifs. So that's a lot more than you want to be a playoff team. But if the wide receiver group behind Jerry Jeudy is ready to take that leap that the Browns think they're ready for. That's Cedric Tillman. That's Jamari Thrash, who had a great camp. If those guys can perform better than what they have to this point, if they can become consistent options and weapons for this team, then there's no reason to think that they can't contribute to this offense and make it better than people are anticipating. And if that happens, they'll be talked about. It'll be the reason why the offense is better and why the offense maybe has great success. Like that would take the offense to another level if guys like Cedric Tillman and Jamari Thrash, for example, and even Harold Fannin Jr. as an extension of that receiver room can really take off and cement themselves as weapons on this team. There'd be sort of a surprise of, well, hey, the Browns actually have some guys in this room, and they have some guys at this position group. And that'd be nice for them for sure, to just kind of realize their full potential. And it would mean that the Browns have more weapons and whatnot there than we initially thought. So those are the big things, the big ifs on the list for the Browns to, again, surprise everyone and be a playoff team if these things happen. we'll see. And that all sort of starts on Sunday against the Bengals, which, by the way, Jim Schwartz shared the recipe for beating Joe Burrow and company this weekend. We'll talk about why I think the Browns are going to win as well. And I'll give you my prediction, my score prediction for week 1. Keep it locked with the Locked On Browns podcast. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered. Powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players deliver when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For the Browns, I'm looking at undrafted rookie Gage Larvadan, who delivered in a big way during the preseason. He scored a touchdown in 2 of the games to help Cleveland have a 3-0 preseason overall, and he earned himself a roster spot because he came through every single day at practice. No hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, this performance wasn't a fluke. Gage Larvadan is on a streak leading up to the season. And just like Gage Larvadan delivered for the Browns, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including 100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. All right, so we talked to Jim Schwartz on Thursday, and I thought he had some really interesting stuff to say just in general about how the Browns win this game on Sunday against the Bengals. It's not necessarily a surprise because there's things that we have talked about already on the show. I said it on Monday when I predicted the Browns are going to win this game anyway and how it was going to happen, that the defensive line was going to play a major role. But I've raved about it. Others in the media, and I think fans have raved about how good this unit's going to be. But when you hear it from Jim Schwartz, it just means a little bit more. This was him on Thursday raving about that group. Not ready to crown him yet, but raving about how good they can be and why they're the key to beating Joe Burrow on Sunday.
Well, the biggest thing is our defensive line is much, much improved over last year. And I think we've got back to our personality. We saw it I think we started seeing it back in OTAs. We showed good signs of it in training camp. And I think, even though we didn't have our guys on the field a lot during preseason games, we saw it in the practices, and we saw it in the preseason games. And that's a huge, huge thing for us because, it's hard to win versus Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Yosevas and Gesicki and those guys with a quarterback like, Burrow. So, we have to really we have to win up front, and that's a big part of it. Guys like Mason Graham we brought in here to give us interior rush, brought in guys like Malik Collins to give us interior rush. Those are big things. We know they can help on the outside part of the field with guys like Miles. They can chip. They can leave tight ends into protection. But our ability to win inside in this game is going to go a long way to coming out with a win. Yeah, we'll see, right? But I think they have the makings of that. I think one of the biggest things is we're able to play a true form of attack now because of those. And we have improved players. I think Isaiah McGuire had a good year last year. I think he's improved over that. Alex is as good as I've seen him. Guys like Cam, adding Joe Tryon, a lot of speed there. Defensive tackles, getting some young blood in there. I think we have the makings of it, but when it's all said and done, we got to prove it on the field. I like where we're going, but let's not crown them just yet.
So we broke it down there for you. Getting pressure from the interior is key to stopping Joe Burrow and making sure he's uncomfortable and can't do the things that he's going to want to do in a game setting against this Browns defense. And yeah, like Miles is always going to be highlighted. Miles is always going to be the guy that you're pinpointing on, that teams are game planning for, all those things. But it's those guys, and I've talked about him, Malik Collins and Mason Graham, Mike Hall, who was back at practice on Thursday for the first time. Like, those guys are going to be key to disrupting this Bengals offense that is so elite with the skilled players that they have, as we know, and with Joe Burrow under center. And if that happens, there's certainly reason to believe that they can win. I also liked that end part there where he mentions, like, we're finally back to the identity we want to have. We are finally that attacking style defensive line. And this has come up a lot because Mason Graham played in more of like a read and react style defense in college at Michigan. But they liked the fact that even in that style defense, he would get in the backfield and still cause problems. And they feel like his game was going to translate perfectly. Having guys like that in the middle that can just kind of, hey, we're all in the attack. It's not about like reading and reacting right now. We just want to get in the backfield and make life hard for whoever's getting the ball, whether it's Burrow, whether it's a running back, whatever. The fact that they're able to play that attacking style is going to be so pivotal to the season. And he's right. They have the personnel to do it. And what's nice is I talked about injuries being it's just always a factor for every team. But as you know, guys maybe getting banged up throughout the season, they have a lot of depth this year, more than ever, in my estimation, up front in that group, which is why I have so much confidence in them as well. Because, like I said, like Mike Hall is basically a backup right now. But if Malik Collins or somebody gets hurt at some point this season, or if he's out for a few games or whatever, you know you have a guy that you can count on to sort of come in and play at a high level. You have somebody like Aiden Huntington who's just got that high motor, is going to work his ass off every single play. You like those types of guys. And on the edge, yeah, it's the rotation of Alex Wright and Isaiah McGuire. It's Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, who is a former first-round pick that can, in this role, I think, be even more effective than he was as kind of like that linebacker role for the Bucs when he got drafted. Like, there's a lot to like about this group. I think it's poised to be the Browns' strength, obviously, and it's going to be the reason why they win on Sunday, in my estimation. I gave you the fact that I think they win this game to start 1-0 as part of my 6 wins for the season. My score prediction. I know I said with James on our crossover show yesterday, which we recorded peek behind the curtain here on Wednesday. We recorded that on Tuesday. So that was a whole 2 days before I was ready to sort of submit my official prediction. I think 27 is a little high. What I think happens on Sunday, though, is the Browns defense is menacing, especially the defensive line. They cause a lot of problems for Joe Burrow. I think this is a low-scoring game, and I'm going to say that the Browns win 22-20. Weird score, but when I do these predictions, I always feel like I pick the easy common scores of like with touchdowns and field goals had it together, and it never works out that way. So I'm going a quirky score, 22-20. The Browns come out victorious. They limit the damage. They get out of there with a win, and they start the season 1-0. Another episode down with you, Dog Pound. Thank you for joining me as always to talk about your favorite football team. Obviously, I'll be talking to you here down the line this weekend with week 1 upon us on Sunday. And hopefully, we're talking about a Browns win. But if you like what you heard, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make Locked On Browns your first listen every day. Wherever you get your podcast and at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel for your second listen. Check out Locked On NFL season previews. I know that we just had week 1 last night start, but still opportunity to get a sense of where we're at with predictions, division winners, breakout stars, all that. It's an 8-part series leading up to the season here in the official kickoff of week 1 on Sunday. Or as always, you can keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs or Locked On Guardians. Thank you for being on every day at the Locked On Podcast Network. I'll talk to you again Sunday. Have a good weekend, Cleveland.